Well, I think that with NaNoWriMo going on right now, where you guys have to write 50,000 words, and with World Ember coming, where you have to write a minimum of 10,000 words, the topic on everyone's lips is burnout. So,
Yeah.
Chris, what are your thoughts? Do you suffer from burnout?
Yes. So I think everybody does at some point in one way or another, and burnout can feel different for different people. I think for me, burnout a lot of times looks like a drastic reduction in output of articles sometimes. So that could go from like, maybe I'm getting 2 or 3 or 4 articles done in a week to like maybe I'm doing that in a month, you know. Um, and again, it's different for everybody. But there are a couple ways that you can probably get around it. Again, a lot of it, and I know I keep bringing this up, but it comes back to goals, right? Like being able to focus on a goal and how you tackle it. So, um, working in Taros, burnout, I can get around it if maybe I schedule like a game just with my players. That's going to immediately get you around that burnout because one, you have to create some very specific content for your players, and then after the game, after you write it up, after you play it, you're going to want to incorporate some of what happened into your world. So for those of you that have the luxury of being able to world build for, a role-playing game, that's a great way to get around it. Other ways to do it, I mean, you have to recognize that like burnout is it's fatigue. It's, you don't burn out when you haven't done a whole bunch for your setting or your world. You burn out when you have. So that might mean that you have to just step away for a while and jump into some of those like hobbies and relaxation stuff that we talked about before, because although it's good to get stuff on a page, if you're only getting out like 20, 30, 40 words and can't get past that, then there might be a problem, and it's just that you need to take a day off, have some tea and relax, play a game, I don't know.
Yeah.
So I guess that all focuses back on just being okay with burnout. Like, don't look at it like you're doing something wrong, or something is falling apart. Like, people need breaks. It's why we don't work 24 hours a day. We work 8 and we go home, and maybe there's a lunch in the middle. So yeah, you have to be okay with whatever your flow happens to be. And I think those hobbies are a great way to like re-energize you and get you back into it. And the goal is also key to that too. Like you're probably gonna burn out quicker if you can't see the end of the runway, so to speak, right? Like if you don't know where you're going and all you're doing is working, then that's gonna slowly pile up and weigh on you. So if it's a set number of words, that helps avoid burnout because you know when you're done. If it's working toward releasing a product or something, then you know where that runway is, and et cetera, et cetera. Like just being able to see the end of something and know what you're moving toward, I think is super helpful.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. A very wise thing that one of my music teachers said to me once is
Mhm.
that because musicians also suffer from burnout in a way,
Sure.
and from blocks. And she said that one of the reasons that we suffer from burnout is because our output has exceeded our input.
Yeah.
So our creative output is sort of churning away, but we haven't had enough creative input, and we haven't had enough sort of percolation time for that creative input.
Yeah.
Um, and part of that is just rest. Part of that is finding sort of external and different sources of inspiration. And sometimes you just need a change, whether that's a
Yeah.
change of project or whether that's a change of scene. So if I'm feeling that I have a burnout coming on, I will go to the museum because it
Yeah.
gets me out of my house. It gets me into a different space. It's out of my normal routine, and it's full of sort of essentially world building ideas. I wander around the museum with my world building notebook being like, oh, Roman sarcophagi, this is awesome. You know,
For sure. I mean, focusing on anything is hard, right? Like, and we wouldn't look strangely at like an athlete who, after a big game, said that he's tired, right? That like he's given it his all and it's done and he's tired. Like that would be super natural for all of us to look at. But like, it's suddenly different when, I've now mentally focused and produced something and worked super hard and I'm tired after that. And everybody's like, well, what did you just like typed for a while, right? Like,
Yeah.
but no, it's more than that. Like it is tiring to focus and to create. So like you need to take breaks, you know, it's just as hard of a work up here as it is to like, you know, be an athlete sometimes. And I know some people might think that sounds crazy, but like this is a muscle too. It needs to be trained. You have to have routine. You have to, you know, work and improve and exercise. You can't just like sit down at a keyboard and bang something out that's amazing the first time around. So
Yeah, I think there's also particularly for, you know, well, actually for anybody in the world building industry, because, you know, we're writers, we're game masters, we are game designers, we're
yeah,
dealing with worlds that have massive emotional ramifications. That's the conflict, that's the drama, that's the story.
right.
So we also, as well as doing work, like doing physical running, but for the brain, we are also dealing with a lot of emotional catharsis. And I think that
Yeah,
sometimes that can be a massive cause of burnout. I know that when um, I wrote a novelette a while ago. Um, and when I came up with the idea, I was like, oh yeah, this is going to be nice.
mhm,
It's going to be fun. It's going to be an interesting little story. And it sort of developed into a level that was much deeper than that emotionally. And I got to a point where I was like, this is actually really heavy. Like this is kind of a lot.
yeah,
And I found that I had to work through that emotionally, as well as, you know, having to do a draft and then another one and then another one and then another one, because as we all know, writing is rewriting. So the first thing you write is a pale shadow of the idea that you had. And, you know, you go through the drafts to try and make sure that you craft it into the thing that you dreamed of.
yeah, for sure. I mean, what you're creating, like the goal, I guess, of any writing project, when you really boil it down, is to make someone feel something, right? Like to have an impression. And like for me, I know when I'm creating something, if I get that little like shiver up my spine or that like, you know, the tingle in the heart or whatever, like when I put those words to the page, I'm like, oh, I've created something that's doing that. But it also means that like I had to feel it first and then like analyze it and break it down and put it on a page. And like I can only feel so many things a day before I'm good, you know. That's it for me. So yeah, the emotion is there. You feel what you write, you feel what you intend to make other people feel. So yeah, there's just a hard limit to how many feelings you can have a day before you should have a cup of tea and call it there, you know.
Right, exactly. That's a very nice way to put it.